What the heck? Why is my Hmm. Mm, um, Hey, Cole.
Hey, Bridget, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Mhm.
We're gonna give it just a couple minutes, let some folks join in here,
Okay.
and then we'll go ahead and get started.
And you're gonna share the PowerPoint, right? Okay.
Yeah, I can do that for you. Absolutely. We get that shared now. So we have it on screen. All right, we'll give it one more minute. We'll
Okay.
get started.
How's your day going?
Not bad. Pretty good day. Pretty good day. Yours?
It's been long, but yeah, it was good.
Tends to happen. Well, we're on the second half of the week now, so that
Yes,
is
we
a
are.
good thing. Speaking of, we'll go ahead and get started.
All right.
For those of you joining us today, appreciate it. For those of you watching the recording later on, thanks for joining us. My name is Cole Marting. I am the executive director here at the California Young Republicans. And oh my gosh, do you have a treat tonight? Tonight, we're talking political engagement. That's right. And we have Bridget here to run the show. She is all things political. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Bridget. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And please, as we go ahead, leave your questions down below. Leave them in the comment section, and we are happy to answer them. Go ahead, Bridget.
Thanks, Cole. If you want to go to the next slide for me, please. Next one. Okay, my name's Bridget Mahoney. I am the California Young Republican Federation Political Director for this term. And I will be talking to you guys about political engagement tonight. Just a little bit of background about myself for those who don't know me. I first got involved in politics my senior year of college, doing an internship for a woman who was running for city council in Santa Rosa, and she won that race and then became vice mayor. So I was able to still intern with her when she was vice mayor of Santa Rosa. And that led me to my first political job with a strategy firm right after college, where we ran ballot measures up and down the state and ran campaigns ranging statewide to county races from Congress, county supervisors, county sheriff, et cetera. I got my master's degree at USF in public affairs and worked for a political strategy firm during that time as well. All of these were Democratic firms, since I couldn't find any Republicans to work for in the state of California, unfortunately. And since I didn't want to work full-time for Democrats afterwards, I decided to take a back step with politics and not have that be my main job, but something I was always involved in. Fast forward to 2019, I started going to my San Mateo County Central Committee meetings, asking how I could get more involved. And that led me to run for state assembly in the 2020 election cycle. Since then, I've been involved with the YRs local, statewide, and nationally. I've served as the membership director for the California Young Republicans, and now I'm the political director. I've also been third vice chair of San Mateo Central Committee. I was the vice chair for the San Mateo Young Republicans, and now I'm the social chair for the San Francisco Young Republicans. I'm also a delegate for the state CAGOP. I've been a delegate since 2019, and I also serve on the executive committee and proxies and credentials committee. I was appointed to be an RNC delegate and will be going to Milwaukee in a few days for convention, and beyond excited about that. If you want to go to the next slide. So that's just a little bit about me. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about what political engagement we can get involved in as an organization. So we'll go over endorsements, GOTV efforts, and partnering with elected officials and Republican central committees. All right, so for endorsements, an endorsement is one of the greatest things that can strengthen a candidate's campaign. They come from existing organizations and individuals that have credibility among voters, and help candidates tell voters that they have support and that they are legitimate and that you should vote for them because, you know, X, Y, and Z is telling you to do so. Endorsements are earned. That cannot be stressed enough. It is up to candidates to solicit endorsements. And from an organizational standpoint or an individual standpoint, just because somebody asks you for an endorsement does not automatically guarantee them one. From an organizational standpoint, like California Young Republican Federation, it's important to have a process for how we go about collecting endorsement requests, and that it's uniform for all candidates running for office and who are seeking our endorsement. Want to go to the next slide, please? So how we do so is through an endorsement questionnaire. Typically, it's the easiest way to do so with an online form. Some organizations have candidates print it out and mail it back in. Mostly, though, they're all done online. Using a Google form is an easy way to go, since that all responses are then collected into one location. You don't have to be combing through emails looking for responses. Can read on the screen here. It's important to, when you do start to create an endorsement questionnaire, there's no need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the format of it. Most county parties and organizations already have a standard form in place. So if you're a new chapter starting out and you'd like to have an endorsement process, it's easy to just contact other, YR groups or your county central committee and ask them for their endorsement form, and then you just tailor it to your needs. You also, through that form, can determine what information you feel is pertinent. For example, on the screen, San Diego Young Republicans endorsement questionnaire probably will have questions that are specific to San Diego County may not make sense for San Mateo County or anywhere else in the state. It's also important to think of timeline and calendar. You should have a deadline to submit the endorsement form on there, which typically falls in line somewhere before the primary or general election dates, so that candidates, so that the organization has time to go through the endorsement forms and to decide whether to endorse candidates or not, but then also giving candidates enough time to go out and publicize the endorsements that they've gotten. Wouldn't really make sense to go through all of the time of endorsing someone and candidates to get endorsements if they weren't able to have enough time to really utilize those. It also is a way to highlight what your club has to offer candidates. You can write in there, we'll go through specific questions in there in a few slides, but you can also say like, besides our endorsement, our members are able to phone bank for you or to go door knocking. And so that's just another way to say, how else can we help your campaign, aside from the endorsement. We'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so just some more best practices about when you endorse a candidate. It's key to have relationships with elected officials and local parties already, because sometimes, at least for a state organization, somebody will submit an endorsement form and you don't know anything about them. It's a good way. And for example, this happened this year. We had somebody from Napa County submit an endorsement form that no one had heard of them. We were able to reach out to some of our members and the Napa County Central Committee just to say like, hey, do you know this person? Can you give us a little bit more background outside of the information we receive from that candidate from the form? It's absolutely okay to follow up with candidates with questions from their endorsement forms too. You don't necessarily just have to take the information they gave you as fact or truth. You should do due diligence and go through their answers carefully, go through their social media websites, their answers, and call them and follow up if something seems off, or you just don't necessarily feel right about it, or if your members have a lot more questions when you bring it up for an endorsement vote. Again, to reiterate, just because a candidate fills out this form, it does not guarantee them an endorsement. Another thing that does come up is if there's more than one Republican in a given race. Most of the time, not all Republicans who are in the same race fill out the form. That's not necessarily a reason to endorse one Republican over the other. Typically, it's best in a primary to not endorse when there are two Republicans, just to let the voters decide for themselves for that. We don't like in-party fighting. And then that also is another way to get involved with your electeds and local parties, because you may not know if there's any sort of drama, or if there's one candidate that, really should have the endorsement over the other. It's a good way to then get more information by having those relationships with people in those districts. All right, so a questionnaire won't look like this, like just bullet points on the screen. But these are some sample questions, and these are the questions that we have on our current endorsement questionnaire. One thing I forgot to mention in the previous slides too is you endorse candidates during the primary as well as the general election. So you can still have, you just want to tailor your questions and the deadline to submit the forms based off of the dates for the primary and the general election. Key things to have in a questionnaire is contact information. We need to have a way to either contact the candidate if they're turning in the endorsement form themselves, or somebody from their campaign staff. It's important because then we have to let the candidates know afterwards whether we chose to endorse them or not. And we'll need a way to be able to contact them after we do endorse them, so that we can help with get out the vote efforts and anything else that their campaign might need. So contact information is really important. Next is obviously what position they're running for and if there's any incumbents in office. It's good to ask why they're running for office and who their other current endorsements are. A good way to gauge if we should endorse a candidate or not is based off of who has already endorsed them. Typically, that's going to be their local central committee and the state party. Typically, if they're endorsed by them, it's a pretty safe bet that it's okay for us to go ahead and endorse them. But you still don't want to just automatically, because they got endorsed by, the state or the county. It still is up to us to determine whether we want to endorse them as well. For young Republicans specifically, a big thing is how are they going to help young Republicans once they get into office? And why they think it's important to have young Republican, why they want our endorsement. Like why are they seeking the young Republican endorsement for their campaign, and how is it going to be beneficial to them? And then it's fun to just end with a fun question. Everything else is pretty cut and dry, but we threw in like, what's your favorite reason for being a Republican? It's always fun to read those answers and to see what candidates say. Right, we can go to the next slide. All right, get out the vote. So once we have our endorsed candidates, what comes next? GOTV. This is the best way for young Republicans to get involved and to help our candidates get elected. Get out the vote is not only for candidates as well, it can also be for ballot measures too. I just want to preface that. Okay, next slide, please, Cole. Okay, so what is GOTV? Most of you watching this recording or on the call have been involved in a campaign or have door knocked or phone banked, and obviously know that GOTV stands for Get Out the Vote. It's a really great free tool, mostly free for campaigns, because anybody can help them. And what it is helping elect candidates. It's promoting our Republican Party and platform. But it also could be, in support of ballot measures too. The point of this is obviously to help get our preferred candidates elected. And getting out the vote can be done in a variety of ways. Door knocking, phone banking, email blasts, social media, text messaging, direct mail, hosting events. There's no shortage of ways on how you can help spread the word about your candidates. And let's see. It is then we have from when it's the start of early voting until polls close on election day. This is for primary and general elections. Next slide, please. All right, best practices on how to host. Most of the time, you will be reaching out to endorsed candidates or candidates that we have chosen to help with their races. So we necessarily wouldn't have to go recruit volunteers on our own. We would be the volunteers going to help campaigns. That being said, it is always better to start early than to be doing, things at the last minute. And another thing then when you're determining this is what areas are you covering? Depending on how many volunteers you have for any given event, that really determines how much area you can cover on a certain day. But once you contact the campaigns, campaigns typically know what areas you're going to target, and we'll have access to the technology that you'll be using, such as Campaign Sidekick, Advantage, or etc. Multi-channel get out the vote efforts. If you can't knock on doors or make it to a deployment that we already have scheduled, You can volunteer to phone bank or text for candidates too, and this can be done on your own time from your own home. If you've never phone banked before, it can be nerve-wracking. I remember being nervous the first time I ever phone banked, or for candidates. So clubs can organize phone bank parties and provide food and drinks to volunteers that come, to help people feel more comfortable. It's really fun, and it also is a way for you to engage your club members. And a key thing to also keep in mind for this is that many organizations give out awards for clubs who go above and beyond. So it was really important to keep track of how many doors you knock and how many phone calls or texts you send out, by per candidate, based on your club. And it's good for us to have in mind too, because it shows that for our statewide organization, that we really can make an impact in helping get candidates elected. For statewide and national deployments, these are typically based on targeted races where we want to flip a seat or we make sure we keep a seat, and that our chances of winning are high based on voter registration in that area. More local deployments are really on a club per club basis. It's up to your local club, or your county party to determine what candidates you're going to really devote all of your time and efforts to helping get elected. When you are door knocking or phone banking, it's very important to keep in mind your appearance and your behavior. For example, look presentable when you're knocking on doors. You have to remember that you are representing the candidate and our party. Also, practice the speech beforehand, even run it through with a friend. Most of the time when you're knocking doors, you're paired up with somebody. You typically won't be by yourself. So a lot of the times it can feel stagnant. You don't necessarily want it to seem like you're just reading words off of a paper. You want to be excited and engaged and show voters who you're interacting with that you're enthusiastic about this candidate, and they should be too. Another key thing is to not engage in arguments. If somebody, you can tell somebody does not want to talk to you, or someone is hostile on the phone or at the door, just briefly say, thank you for your time, walk away or hang up the phone. Those are just some brief thoughts on this, which can fully be expanded upon in another training session on the do's and don'ts of canvassing for campaigns. But just those are just some overall things to keep in mind, and to share with your chapters, especially for people that have never knocked on doors or phone banked before. Excellent. All right, partnering with elected officials and Republican central committees. This can be tough in areas like I'm in San Francisco, for example, where we don't have any elected Republicans, unfortunately. But for areas where there are, the benefits are great, and it gives you great exposure with the party and helps establish credibility with your local chapter and clubs that you're involved in. Right, next slide, please. So benefits. Access and experience to party. It will help you if you know an elected official and establish a great relationship with them or their staff. They are able to appoint state delegates and alternate delegates. This is another great way to get involved at the statewide level, not just within your local central committees. This is also key if you are interested in running for public office before, because if you establish these relationships now, when you're going back to seek endorsements, you already will have that name recognition, and you already will have a relationship. You won't have to kind of be cold calling people to say, will you help support me? Elect, excuse me. Even if you don't want to run for office, if you are keyed in with staff of electeds or people within your central committees, everyone always has access or kind of knows about when jobs are opening up for campaigns or for staffing, if that's something that you're interested in too. They also typically have contacts in the media. So if you're trying to gain more exposure for your club and would like to do that via radio, television, print, you'll be able to utilize those contacts to get you access to those outlets too. All in all, this just helps grow your local chapter, which then helps the statewide organization overall boosting membership. That is what I have set out pretty much for this presentation. Obviously, everything I touched on is pretty overall highlights. Each one in and of itself could be expanded into its own presentation, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions, to clarify anything that I didn't explain clearly. And yeah, and just to hear from you on what you thought of this presentation, or if there was something that I overlooked or missed that you'd like to know more about.
For those of you joining the call, feel free to unmute or drop your question down in the chat. We'll have that open for you right now.
And then if you don't think of anything right at the moment, you can reach me at cyrfpolitical@gmail.com. And yes, thank you for joining.
Awesome. Well, in the meantime, Bridget, thank you so much for hosting tonight's, and this is the final training. This is the final Zoom
Yes.
training.
I know.
So
I hope it's not the last for this summer, but I've really enjoyed all of the other presentations, and I really hope that this was beneficial to everybody who watched and joined in.
it's always a pleasure having a real pro talk through their expertise. Always fun. I'm curious, Bridget. I have a question for you. What is your preferred method of GOTV? You talked about texting. You talked about door knocking. I mean, shoot.
I
Sometimes
know,
you're
and
even
it's the
waving
big
signs.
the big debate too on what's most effective. Everyone has different answers. I like door to door. I like going door to door. More so than phone banking. I mean, everyone who's done it before too knows phone banking, most of the time people don't answer. You can call 100 phone numbers and maybe talk to 2 people. That's just the day and age we live in. No one wants to answer the phone, and everyone I think is sick of getting the phone calls and texts, especially around election season 2. I think when you're face to face with a person, you really make the most impact, and really are able to kind of change a voter's mind if they're undecided.
Awesome. Is there any other last comments you want to leave before we go ahead and close it out for the night?
No, I'm all set.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining this summer Zoom training series. It's been an hour. Well, thanks for being there. And don't forget to drop your comments down below. We're going to be hosting this series online. So thank you all for joining tonight. Bridget, thank you for hosting. And we'll catch you next time at another CYRF event.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Take care.